Hey everyone, welcome to day 2 of VAB's State of TV Measurement Series. I'm Carrie Flynn, media deals reporter at Axios, and I'm here with some credible people across the TV industry from really all sides of the spectrum. I'd love for each of them to give us some super quick intros on what they do, and I have hopefully an easy icebreaker question. I'm wondering if I and the wider industry should keep or stop using the term alternative currency. I'll admit that I use it a lot, and really I'm throwing it out there today to wonder if that's something that I should throw in the trash.
Thanks, Carrie.
Thanks, Carrie. Hi, I'm Steve Murtos. I'm SVP of Brand Partnerships over at iSpot, and happy to be here today. Thanks for having me. I would vote for new currency instead of alternative currency.
Thanks, Steve. And I'm Michael Piner, and I'm the Advanced Advertising Lead for Mediahub Worldwide. We're part of IPG's media brands. And I believe that the term was helpful as an umbrella term for us to easily reference currency providers that weren't Nielsen, that were outside of Nielsen. But now as we reach critical mass in using some of those currencies and they become standardized and certified, we can move away from it over time.
Hi, my name is Roseanne today, and I oversee audience innovation, business outcome measurement, and alternative currency at A&E Networks. So I guess my title should kind of change considering we're moving away from calling it alternative currency. I agree with everyone. We should definitely move away from calling it alternate currency because it should just be a way of the future and the way that we're going to move into how our industry is going to operate. So it shouldn't be alternate because really, what is it alternate to?
Thank you. Hi, everybody. So my name is Elsa Blumberg, and I'm AVP of Client Analytics at DirectTV Advertising. I would say, Steve, I'm going to agree with you on this one. I think new currency is kind of the way that I would refer to what used to be alternative currency, just as a point of differentiation, so people know what we're talking about as opposed to old traditional linear Nielsen measurement and currency.
Amazing. Well, thank you for those intros. And I guess I'm glad to know we're all in consensus and we're in agreement that I should stop using alternative currency, and I'll embrace, also, as you just said, new currency. So in case you weren't aware, our panel today is called Currency Evolution. We're talking about really what we just discussed, the fact that we're in this land of new currencies, multiple currencies, not just one currency. Steve, I want to start with you, since iSpot, where you work, is really one of the leaders of this new landscape, the so-called, again, alternative currency. Nope, I'm going to say new currency. I'll get there. Can you tell me what you think really drove the industry to this point?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my focus at iSpot is all about helping our brand customers with measurement across the full advertising lifecycle. So think creative assessment all the way through to business outcomes. We measure all of that. And really what we've been seeing from the brands is that they need faster, more granular data to keep up with the ever fragmented viewing behavior that's exploded over the past 10 years. So I think these market forces are really what it's making it harder and harder for brands to reach their audiences, which means they need to evolve to an ad first approach, which helps them better understand the performance of their media investment. So I think that ultimately is kind of what's driving this change in needing a different approach in the market.
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying. Your fragmentation, really, that like key word there. Roseanne, as we heard, you're someone who works at a major publisher, a TV network. I'm curious, from your perspective, do you agree with that, or anything else you'd add to from your side of the industry? How we took here?
Yeah, I mean, I think since the dawn of advertising, right, we've been guaranteeing against archaic demographics. That really, does that mean that someone that's in market to purchase a vehicle that's 55 shouldn't be targeted because the demographic that we're guaranteeing against is adults 25 to 54? So there's this whole other audience that we're missing out on really speaking to. And that's the direction that we're hoping at A&E Networks to kind of shift the market towards, looking at what KPIs matter most. It's not a one size fits all model. So even when we are partnering with vendors like iSpot and doing a guarantee against foot traffic, it does not mean that all retailers or all automotives have the same exact number of dealerships or storefronts or a QSR. So it really is customizable. And we do work very closely with Mike and over at Mediahub to really make sure that whatever matters most to the brands is something that we can shift towards. So if it's app downloads or foot traffic, like I mentioned, or conversions, that's really the direction that we should be focusing on, as opposed to just, random currencies that don't necessarily matter.
Well, Michael, perfect, nod to you and your position. You work with a bunch of brands, in an agency world. And so I want to hear, it seems like we're on the side of like, yes, everyone in the industry is embracing this and happy about it. But actually, I'm curious, is that true? Do all brands really want to work in this multiple currency landscape?
Not at all. I think, brands want different options in currency, just like they have different options in measurement providers, right? And I think agencies and brands together and new measurement companies, what we're calling, have been innovated for quite a while in measurement to do exactly what Roseanne outlined, right? To essentially tie exposures across screens and channels, right? To different outcomes, right? And different efficacy metrics, right? So we've been innovating there with providers in measurement. Now we're just taking the next step in moving from measurement with some of those partners to actually currency, right? So it's the next evolution that we're taking. So I think, but when brands settle on an option, and we're at the point where we're matchmaking right now as agencies, matchmaking brands to measurement partners that are evolving to currency partners, and we make that match, right? And we decide on, this is the currency provider that we're going to utilize, then we want to be consistent with that provider across as many partners, channels, and screens that we're buying in the marketplace. And so that's where a lot of work is being done. Things like, as an industry-wide, we're working together, things like the Joint Industry Committee, the VAB here on the call is involved, a lot of different trade organizations, such as the IAB and the MRC. So everyone's kind of coming to the table and aligning that we need like standardization in the marketplace so that we can get that consistency across the market, and everyone can have confidence in the providers that are being chosen.
I'm glad you brought up the fact that there's two words at play here. Like, I just kept using the word currency, but you brought up the fact that measurement and using different measurement providers has been something for a while. Steve, I want to go back to you for a second, because I know iSpot, as you mentioned, it provides both, right? But I guess my interest is, I imagine that not every brand uses you for both. And if so, like, what's stopping them? It goes back to like this tension. I feel like it should be easy for the brand, right? Like, so wouldn't you rather use one provider versus use multiple? Kind of, what do you see in that difference?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we serve hundreds of brand advertisers. We've got all the top 10 spenders. We've got about 85% of the top 50 using iSpot data for measurement. And kind of what we're hearing from them is a need for true unification across linear and streaming. So that means the same data used for measurement and currency. And a lot of brands are leaning into that. So we've got several that are currently using iSpot data for currency transactions. But kind of back to what Roseanne was talking about, I think the brand priorities are really focused on return on investment. And kind of what Mike was saying, the transitions take time. So there's lots of infrastructure investment that's needed, not just from companies like iSpot, but across the industry to like enable the agencies and the brands and the networks to be able to transact on this new currency. So we're fully supportive of some of those industry initiatives that Mike mentioned, like the JIC. We're involved in that. and and others as well. So I think we're going to start to see kind of more and more progress across the board as everyone gets going here.
Well, one thing you mentioned is the fact that there's so much like infrastructure investment, right? And the fact that we're not just relying on, one platform, one system. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. Elsa, I want to talk to you about that. You told me earlier that DirectTV works with 40, I believe, different third-party data providers. I mean, I don't work behind the scenes, but it still sounds really complicated to me. So I'm wondering if you could kind of walk me through, like, it's actually not too complicated. Like, how does it like for brands to actually transact and to work with a platform like DirectTV, again, that's had to respond to this push of multiple currencies, new currencies?
Yeah, that's a great question. The reason that we work with so many data providers is really to minimize buying complexity for all of our clients. At DirectTV Advertising, we take a very data agnostic approach to measurement. By using our first-party deterministic audience and viewership data, we're able to better work with various data partners to enable robust measurement and attribution that works best for all of our clients. And I'll give you an example. Say you're an automotive advertiser and you use a third-party data provider for your campaign activation segments and then your ROI measurement on the back end. Whether you prefer using Polk Automotive or Experian Automotive segments, we can accommodate your preference, right? To really make it a bespoke campaign target and then ROI measure. When it comes to currency though, we've always believed in the idea of alternative/new currency. And we've proven that by working with Comscore for over the past 10 years. And, during that time, we've guaranteed billions of dollars in addressable advertising. We've also explored client first-party billing for our streaming business, which is more of the standard within the digital space, right? This is really important because collaborating with trusted partners can help advertisers do three things, right? And the first thing is it can help them adapt to emerging media channels. The second thing is that it can help them address the current lack of consistency in measurement. And the third thing is that it can help our clients really assess where the industry goes next. Right. So I think one of the things is it's really critical to recognize that in today's multi-currency environment, collaboration and cohesion between both buyers and sellers is absolutely essential, right? We shouldn't rely on developers or publishers to really determine what currencies are going to be used or prioritized. It's really up to the marketing agencies and advertisers to essentially help us, figure out how to fully navigate this new landscape of new currency.
Well, that was fascinating to me from the consumer perspective, as perhaps I should disclose earlier, I have DirectTV, so that's how I consume, media. So I'm fascinated to know how it works with the ads I see. So I feel like I've heard a lot of keywords today. We're in this fragmented landscape, and in order to get through it, we need to collaborate for sure. You spoke about publishers, and we heard from Roseanne earlier. There's a lot of news now coming out this month that upfront conversations are starting to close, and publishers are announcing them. NBC announced that it closed its talks and that its commitments are roughly in line. Fox and Paramount said they're slightly up. I know we're in crazy times right now, given the post-pandemic world we live in. But Roseanne, I want to go to you to hear if you can reveal a little bit about your talks, or if you can't tell me all of the info, is there any kind of top level insights you can give me about how this upfront season has been for A&E, and if there's any kind of big changes compared to years past?
It's definitely the slow boat to China, that's for sure. It's taken a long time, but we're getting there. What I will say is we're really proud of the industry and the shift that it's making towards being more innovative, as opposed to, again, just focusing more on just archaic demos. We are seeing a lot in cross-platform, which is super exciting to us as we start to go into a world that requires having measurement that's measuring all different screens as opposed to just the one that's in our living rooms. So for us to be able to see that shift of linear dollars over to the digital side is exactly the hard work that we've been doing over at A&E to move our advertisers into a place that no matter where the content is being shown, it's being served to them, the ads that they're seeing are being served to them in the most relevant place of their viewing. So while upfront is taking its time, we are in a good place, and we are very happy with the way that the registrations have been coming in.
Good. Well, you'll have to keep me updated when you're ready to brag about the closing of it. Michael, I want to hear from you about upfront negotiations on your side. What are you really hearing from brands? As Roseanne showed, we're hearing a lot about cross-platform, which is fascinating, right? About actually embracing the fact that people consume outside their living room. Are you hearing that too? And anything else you have to add?
Like Roseanne said, I think we're finally seeing the money follow the eyeballs across screens and channels. I think that's critical. We saw some of that last year. I think that has increased this year. So when it comes to measurement, clients are looking for new measurement or alternative measurement options, right, that marry essentially digital with linear, right? So that's what we're into. And this year there was a lot of confusion going into the upfront on not just the new currency providers, but confusing measurement with currency and vice versa. So we had to do a lot of education leading into this year's upfront market about what the differences were, who the new providers were, where we were in certifying those providers and standardizing those providers, and how they could benefit from utilizing some of them, depending on what their goals were, as a brand, as an advertiser, in the marketplace. So we did that, and we did a year of testing at the campaign level last year, side by side, testing different currency providers with one another, and learned a lot in that process. And so this is the next step in that process, is where we can actually use a new currency provider to guarantee an upfront buy. And so I think for a handful of advertisers, we're actually doing that with some providers. And so this will be another critical year in testing these and learning how to integrate them and, clear the hurdles that we have in integrating these partners just within our process, our systems, and everything like that we need to deliver, that we need to implement to deliver for our advertisers during the year. So it's really become a critical year, and we're really taking the next step in this year's upfront in sort of enabling these new currencies.
That's fascinating. I mean, overall, from my perspective, I've been hearing so much about test and learn, right? When I talk to brands or talk to agencies, it's like we're still in that phase. With what you shared, it gives me confidence that perhaps the needle is moving. Like you said, we're getting over that hurdle, and actually dollars will be flowing through, other platforms for when it comes to the currencies versus just the one we're all familiar with. Elsa, I wanted to go to you. Is there anything else you'd add from the DirectTV standpoint that kind of have been your major takeaways from this upfront cycle?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely agree with everything that Roseanne and Michael said about what they're seeing. This year more than ever, we're seeing this kind of the lines blur between upfronts and new fronts. For example, you had Netflix presenting at the upfronts. Meanwhile, NBC had a session on Peacock in the new fronts, right? So as those lines continue to blur, the definition of TV is really shifted. It's encompassing a wider range of content and formats, and consumers no longer see TV as exclusively linear, or and so advertisers must adjust to that transition as well. I think one of the biggest conversations to come out of the upfronts this year was how to account for that shift. Convergence was one of the big keywords being thrown around, and with that, our partners want to know how to manage reach and frequency across platforms. How do you measure media holistically? And that's a huge priority for them. More than ever, clients really want to be able to increase efficiency. They want to reach audiences across linear and digital, and they really want to hold their media accountable. That's why we're seeing our clients lean more into convergent strategies such as addressable, programmatic, innovative ad formats, and so forth.
Awesome. Well, I hear you on the fact that the lines are blurring so much between new fronts and upfronts. Again, the long time coming, and perhaps in the future, there'll no longer be the distinction, kind of like we're saying with old currency, new currency, alternate currencies, like what do all these words mean? Do we still need to keep using them? Stay in touch on that. Steve, I want to hear from you where iSpot is in these negotiations. Like we heard from Michael, the fact that there are agencies and brands really, being able to use different currencies. It's perhaps we're getting over to test and learn. So I'm wondering from the iSpot side, I've heard, your team tells me about all these partnerships you have with several of the major networks. So I'm wondering, is the needle moving for you guys?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't really comment on specific partnerships with any of the networks and deals that we're doing, but we've done a lot of work to enable cross-channel currency for broad age and gender demos. So one of the things, if you're familiar with the way the TV upfronts work, so much is based on that historical data that's been used for so long that we've all been talking about. So to just like flip it into something else doesn't really work easily. So we've spent a lot of time sort of making the data align with that historical, so that there is some sort of way to benchmark things, and that's been really helpful for the brands, as that data is being used as the basis for some transactions today. So there is work being done. There are transactions that are happening using the iSpot data as currency, which is great. And I think that the needle's going to continue to move as brands and agencies become more comfortable, like Michael was saying, and everyone just having more familiarity with this data and understanding sort of what it looks like compared to what it looked like before, I think is a big piece of it. And I think the great piece of this is that we're going to start to see new metrics emerge. So rather than just GRPs only, we're going to start talking about unique reach and incrementality and attention, which are just metrics we haven't really tied to currency conversations before. It's always been very kind of basic in terms of GRP delivery, which I think this the new currency model will enable a lot more of that.
Great. Well, I'll remember those. There's new buzzwords I'll have to understand, educate myself on. What I'm wondering is, I know we've kind of like touched on this, but we want to hammer down on kind of what the major takeaways are. If we were to essentially reconvene next year, what you predict the major changes in this marketplace will be. I think from my side, I'm going to pray and hope that me and the rest of the press will stop using the word alternate or alternative currency. But I don't know, you'll have to hold me to that. Steve, let's start with you. Is there anything else you'd share when it comes to kind of the changes? I know you just talked about kind of the different metrics, but anything else you'd add?
Yeah, a couple of things. One big thing that's kind of elephant in the room that we don't really know what's going to happen is the strikes that are kind of happening in Hollywood right now, and kind of how that's just going to, upend everything potentially. But that aside, hopefully next year at this time we're not talking about strikes and all the content is back and everyone's moving forward. But I do think viewing fragmentation was kind of what we started talking about. That's going to continue. But the brands and agencies will continue to get better at that cross-channel measurement like we talked about. So I do believe, back to what I was just saying about KPIs changing, that's going to be kind of the big story, is that there's going to need to be a deeper level of understanding of investment performance tied to something beyond a GRP.
Yeah, that's a great point about the strikes. I guess it's like TBD what everyone will actually be measuring and transacting on, because who knows what content will actually be appearing on our screens. Michael, I'm curious to hear from you about anything else you'd add on kind of those major predictions of what we'll be talking about next year.
Yeah, I'll just expand on what Steve said, actually. And it's kind of also the elephant that's not in the room that needs to be in the room, I would say. When he talked about new metrics, and that's really exciting, all of this new measurement and currency, we could develop, new metrics that really sort of closely tie to outcomes that clients care about, right? I think the GRP no longer does that, but the elephant that's not in the room is the death of the GRP, which is impending next TV season, the 24-25 TV season. where that's going to be phased out and sunset by Nielsen. And we're going to officially move to a ad impression-based marketplace, which is needed to marry digital with linear. But that is a sea change for many clients to think about, not being able to rely on that GRP and GRPs per week flow chart that many legacy TV clients are used to. So I think this time next year, we'll be talking a lot more about that, or even actually under a year, we're going to be focused on that a lot more in 2024 and how we guide our clients through that transition.
I love the elephant not in the room. That's definitely a big mental shift, a big shift in the industry. Roseanne, I'm curious, is that something you're worried about? And anything else you'd add for what will be kind of the major shift over the next year?
That is everything that I'm worried about, because especially within audience and guaranteeing against audience, what we find a lot of times is that a client wants to optimize against a strategic target, but they're still holding true to the demo GRPs. So it's like we're optimizing towards one thing and then looking to make sure that we're pacing against something else. So it's like this scale is so off. So as we're shifting towards a new form of measurement, what does that actually look like? And are we going to be able to shift the industry towards looking at what the actual KPI is that's helping to keep their lights on from a business perspective, as opposed to focusing on, again, these demos that don't necessarily matter, as well as the GRPs.
Well, I'm glad, I guess you're in agreement there, and hopefully together you can kind of get over the anxiety, since again, we're all in it together. Elsa, I'll end with you. Anything else you'd add?
Yeah, I mean, I also think that we're going to see an influx of innovation and experimentation throughout really all parts of the ecosystem as it relates to currencies. And, you know, while I think we could still be in a test and learn phase next year, I do think that as an industry, you know, we're going to have a better idea of where we want to go in terms of currency and measurement in the future.
I would love to stop using the phrase or test and learn. Well, I guess not me not using, but repeating it from other people. So yeah, we'll see about that. Also, well, thank you guys so much for taking the time. That was so helpful for me. So I hope also for everyone tuning in, and for those tuning in, there's still time to register for tomorrow's sessions. You can do so at the VAB.com. That's VAB's website, the VAB.com. And with that, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks you.